So hi, I'm Nalin Marwah. I'm from Del Norte High School and presenting from San Diego. And with my mentor Kevin, I worked on my project focused on the game of cricket and trying to improve the fast bowling action. So probably not many of you guys may not know what cricket is, so I'll try to explain it as briefly as possible. But you can compare it to baseball, as it's a sport where basically one person has a bat and the other person has a ball. The person with the bat is trying to get points while the person with the ball is trying to get them out. And one type of person in cricket who's trying to get the batsman out would be called the fast bowler. And unlike in baseball, where it's basically you're throwing the ball, in cricket, there's a lot more regulations. So we do something called bowling the ball. And this has regulations where you have to keep your arm straight. So obviously, the momentum needed to get to 140, 150 kilometers per hour is not generated just by, your bent arm and throwing the ball. So that requires fast bowlers to go through a whole process, as you can see through these images, where they go through a run up, jump, delivery, and then follow through phase in order to, run in and generate all the momentum into force behind the ball. And, in the past 400 years of the game of cricket, fast bowling has been really revolutionizing the game. And many professional bowlers have become popular because of their abilities to bowl, 150 kilometers per hour, basically as fast as baseballers without being able to bend their arm and actually throw the ball. They have to bowl the ball while keeping their arm straight. But the problem is, many novice bowlers struggle with proper alignment, including myself when I was playing a few years ago. And there's a lot of different small alignment issues when you're trying to use every part of your body to generate this momentum. So the goal here was to see how can you use pose estimation in order to identify these flaws with fast bowling and help novice bowlers reach the same levels as professionals in terms of their body action. So in order to do this methodology, there's three different components I had to do. First is that you need a pose estimation model in order to take angles of somebody's bowling action throughout when they're delivering the ball. You also need something to compare them to in order to tell them what the optimal angles is supposed to be. And lastly, you need to do a comparison between them and identify those key areas where they could work on. So in order to do this, this first step of the project, uh, I used MediaPipe pose estimation because it had 34 pose estimation points, which allows you to cover all the bases of fast bowling because you were able to get angles from your arms, legs, shoulders, all the important parts you need to generate that momentum behind the ball. So after deciding on MediaPipe, thanks to their different pose estimation points, the full list of angles used for this project would be 8 limb angles, so right and left. So the leg, arm, foot, and wrist for both your right and left sides. Then the rotation of those angles, so that's 16. And one more factor added was the linear wrist speed, because that's really important for when delivering the ball. So those 17 parameters is what was looked at by MediaPipe. And once you have MediaPipe, you can just take your MK4 video and you can put it through the MediaPipe pose estimation model, and you'll get two different outputs. One is the CSV file, which is basically a data table that contains all the different angles at different frame rates. And the other is the output video, which will show you the pose estimation throughout your bowling action in that video clip, as well as some of the limb angles, rates, and speeds in the top right corner. So now that we have the CSV, now that we can generate a CSV file from this, the second part was to create the data set. And the data set was made from professional fast bowlers who have been playing the game of cricket. So these are people who have played international matches, taken numerous international wickets, and have in general bowled thousands of balls over their career. So they've been bowling these balls at 140, 150 kilometers easily. So these are people who are basically have it down to a science, and it's almost second nature for them to bowl. So they're obviously the ones you want to compare novice bowlers to, who aren't as experienced and whose action will tend to vary. So to create this data set, I did reach out to several companies that would have, professional quality bowling videos from matches. But unfortunately, since I didn't get many replies from them, I had to use the internet and YouTube in order to identify the best 30 professional cricket bowlers with a good quality videos that I could use to compare. So I would have to take those videos, edit them down to the 5 to 7 seconds of their bowling action, and then from there run it through MediaPipe, get their CSV file, and create a collection of their CSV files to use as a baseline. So now that we have that, we can get to the third step of the project, and that's to do data analytics. So now we got to compare the novice bowling videos that we generate to the professional fast bowlers and to see now where the novice bowlers need to improve. So in order to do this, first of all the CSV files are collected, as I mentioned before. And then there's three different methodologies to analyze the CSV files. So to analyze this, I used k-means with dynamic time warping. And what that basically means is it shows you the general trend over and data is collected at continuous intervals. And dynamic time warping is basically meant to just standardize all the data because different data clips will have different times. So it's plus or minus 1 second. And then also I also used two different factors such as z-score normalization and the Pearson correlation coefficient. Z-score normalization just means the mean becomes 0 and the deviation becomes plus or minus 1, so the data is easier to analyze. And the Pearson correlation coefficient just checks how similar they are within clusters. So now with this, we're able to generate output graphs that will clusterize bowlers based on their bowling action for different angles. So three different types of graphs are generated. So this is what the video looks like when you generate output, and obviously the angles are in the top left corner. So the three different output graphs we get is we have one with a single vector, which means all the variations in the 17 parameters we talked about is combined into a single vector, and that vector is compared. So as you can see, there's three different clusters going on here. And as you can see by the correlation coefficient, it's not going to be super high because obviously sports has a lot of variation, but you would expect a moderate level, which we do see here. So by clustering them, you can see if novice bowlers are falling with professional bowlers, that's showing that their action is relatively good. And if they're falling outside of professional bowlers range, then that proves their action needs some work. For example, as you can see here, novice 1 was falling outside of most of the fast bowling actions. And if you look at this one, you can see that my bowling action fell with some of the fast bowlers. So this is improving. I'm probably a better bowler than novice 1. And also that my action is more defined. The second type of output refers to the same graph, but for each individual angle. That way you can compare it directly and figure out which angles you need to improve. So as you can see here, for right arm angle, we have, novice 1 is falling with these fast bowlers, and a few of my balls are falling here too. And the same thing here. So since we can see a lot of the bowlers are falling with professionals, this is proving right arm angle is perfectly fine for all these bowlers. However, if we look at the right wrist speed, so the linear wrist speed I talked about, you can see all the novices are falling in their own cluster, while all the professionals are falling within these clusters. So this is kind of implying that wrist speed is a factor that these bowlers should work on. The last type of graph output is by looking at the last type of graph output we got was where you can look at specific values at different points, so you can actually see what the angle is. Because these two top methods, these methods basically are just using a standardized line, and they're not giving you specific values. They're showing you a trend. The last type of graph is you can generate with values, so you can see what your angle is and what a professional bowler's angle is. That way you can compare. So with that statistical analysis, we were able to collect a data set of 22 professional and 14 novice balls. Now, after reducing the data set noise based on variant factors with the quality of the data set, and as I mentioned before, these were the different types of graphs generated, where we can see both their individual features, and we can see specific points. And there's a few factors where there's parity, so there's no variations that the bowlers are doing fine, and there's some where it's obvious the bowlers are not doing good. So this graph here, the skill is basically the parameter. If they meet the required range for that parameter to bowl at their max bowling speed, and a skill is achieved if they fall in a cluster with 6 or 7 professional bowlers. That would be considered achieving the skill. If they do not fall, they fall by themselves or with 1 or 2 bowlers just due to variation. That would be not achieving the skill. So these were the total output for the novices, anywhere between 6 to 11, meaning maybe half the skills. So there's a good amount of things that could be improved upon. So in conclusion, this model tended to show where the parameters were that these fast bowlers could use to improve, and it shows a clear gap of skill between the novices and professionals. So, and this application has been used in a few other different sports. particularly tennis, I would say, because there's a lot of different things with serving serves, but nothing for cricket is used for novice bowling actions. There's only applications for professionals. And in the future, ideally, you would be able to have a better data set to compare this with. But overall, just by having, a small AI model to read the graphs for you, then this could easily just be turned into an app that bowlers would be able to film their video, put it in, and get easy to fix points. So, and yeah, that's my presentation.
This is really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing this work with us. We already have a question coming into the chat. Let's see. Let's see, where did it come in here? First one. How are you able to filter out who the best bowlers were to get that baseline for a professional level? Were there any statistics that you looked at?
Yes, actually. I wasn't able to include it in the presentation, but when I created the data table, so the first thing you have to understand is since I was using YouTube, lots of the video qualities means I have to find bowlers from recent times within the last 20 years to have a decent video to analyze, despite how much I would have loved to use bowlers from the 80s because there's some really good ones. But to filter it out, basically, one, the criteria is that as I said, I used fast and fast medium bowlers. That basically means their bowling speed has to be around 140 to 150K on average. So looking at those statistics and also looking at their matches and wickets. So these are bowlers who have played, numerous matches, like 100, 200 matches. And obviously there's a lots of formats, but I had to combine it into a single table. So just all of them combined. They've also taken lots of wickets, basically meaning they got a lot of people out. So that proves that they're good at bowling. So those were the two criteria looked at for determining who I could pick.
Great answer. Another question. Will you continue to improve the output information to be digestible and understandable for users? And if so, what does it take to take it to that next step?
Yeah, that was kind of what I was trying to talk about in the last little bit, because obviously now you have an output. So that means I could use this data and help bowlers right now, but it's also hard to understand the graphs. I can understand the graphs because I worked on the project and also I have an understanding of cricket. Like, but for other bowlers, they would not be able to understand it. Ideally, you could create an AI model that would look at specific points. It would see where you fall in. Does a lot of professionals fall within you? What's the correlation like? And determine and be able to tell you, hey, you need to improve this angle. And then ideally, it can even give advice to you on how you can improve that angle. Say your wrist speed is 11 kilometers per hour. A professional fast bowler has 24 kilometers per hour. To improve your wrist bowling speed, here are some tricks, here are some tips you could do to improve your wrist bowling speed. And by focusing on that, that would help them improve their speed.
Fascinating stuff. I can see how maybe like coaches would definitely be a resource to kind of factor in with some of the next steps, the recommendations for sure. Can you share with us? Obviously, this was probably a long process. How long did you work on your project?
Uh, it's hard to say. I think technically I started about 6 months ago, but I would say obviously there's some variations. Like some periods I was working on it longer, some periods, I got busy, so less time. Uh, but yeah, I would say a good amount. I would say about 6 months, and some weeks were pretty hectic. I would spend a lot of time. Some I wouldn't be. So just a kind of on off.
Got it. And what would you say was the most challenging part of your project?
I will say it wasn't even doing the pose estimation model or doing the clustering because one, because there's resources out there to help you. My mentor was very helpful. My dad was also very helpful in getting some advice on what to analyze. So writing that was fine. The problem was really the data set because I had to go on I would find videos, and out of the videos I picked, I had to eliminate a lot of them due to, just bad video angles, things like that. So I really would have just loved to have professional quality videos, but that didn't happen. So that was the challenging part of this project. But
Absolutely. We have another audience question. Do you plan to productize this?
uh in the future, possibly, because I could easily imagine this becoming an app with just a little bit more work. Because you have an output now, you just really need to make it, user friendly. Maybe improve the model so you could have, because MediaPipe is a single person model. There's other people oftentimes in cricket if you can make it so it can handle multiple people, then by doing those two things, I think, yeah, I could easily productize this, and that would be something I would love to do in the future.
Super cool. Well, Nalin, thank you so much for sharing this with us.